All right, folks, get ready for a deep dive. One that goes way back with some modern-day twists.
Sounds intriguing.
We're talking Carnatic music.
Oh, cool. Oh.
But not just the ragas and talas we all love.
Yeah.
We're going deeper, looking at how this art form, all about improvisation,
Right.
fits into the, well, kind of rigid world of copyright law.
Ah, now that's a fascinating clash.
And a heads up for our listeners prepping for the UPSC.
Oh, good point. Yes.
This topic hits those sweet spots
Uh-huh.
for both mains and prelims.
Nice. Preparing for those exams can be tough, so any edge helps.
Absolutely. So today we're using a recent article from The Hindu.
Okay.
It's all about this dilemma.
Right.
So picture this.
Okay.
You're at a Carnatic music concert, totally captivated
Love those.
by the artist's just spontaneous melodies.
Yeah.
They're just weaving magic with a raga, taking you on a journey to their own unique interpretation. Now the question is, can you actually copyright those improvised moments?
Good question.
Where's the line,
Yeah.
between a traditional composition and the artist's individual expression?
Yeah, that's where things get tricky, especially legally speaking, because Indian copyright law, much like a lot of systems around the world, it's heavily influenced by that Western idea of music as a written, fixed thing.
Right. Like sheet music set in stone.
Exactly.
Sure.
But Carnatic music, it flips that script completely.
Totally. So let's break this down, this fundamental difference for our listeners, expert. Can you tell us more about what makes Carnatic music so unique in this context?
Sure. At its core, Carnatic music is all about Manodharma Sangeetam, which basically means music of the mind.
Love that. Music of the mind.
It's improvisation. The artist takes a raga,
Right.
a framework of melodic rules, and spontaneously creates within that space. Think of Alapana, that expansive exploration of a raga.
Yeah, beautiful.
Or Neraval, elaborating on a specific lyrical phrase. These aren't precomposed or written down. They exist in the moment, in the performance, born from the artist's creativity, their connection with the music.
And that's exactly where it clashes with how we usually think of copyright, which is about protecting those fixed expressions.
How exactly? Yeah.
But there's another layer here.
Okay.
A lot of those foundational Carnatic compositions, the Kritis, by the greats like Tyagaraja, Dikchitar, Shama Shastri,
Oh, absolutely. The masters.
they predate copyright laws altogether.
Right.
They're in what we call the public domain.
That's right.
So anyone can perform them freely.
Yes.
It's a fascinating paradox.
Isn't it?
The core compositions are open, but it's the individual interpretations, those improvisations
Right.
within that framework that really make each performance unique.
Absolutely. And that's where things get murky, legally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So does a musician's improvisation become its own separate work? Is it copyrightable? Let's say a performer takes a traditional kriti, reimagines it in different raga
Okay.
or tempo. Does that rendition then have its own rights?
These are the questions people are debating. Think about those iconic performers, like Madurai Mani Iyer. His style, those improvisational flourishes, became synonymous with certain kratos.
Absolutely, yeah.
Was that style, that signature interpretation, a form of intellectual property?
It really makes you think. How do we define and protect creativity
Right.
in a tradition that's both ancient and constantly evolving? So for our listeners out there, here's something to think about. If you were a policymaker, how would you navigate this delicate balance?
That's a tough one.
How would you ensure the law protects these artists without stifling the very essence of Carnatic music, which thrives on this open exchange of ideas and interpretations?
It's a challenge, for sure. But first, let's look at what protections actually exist now. It's not a complete void.
Great point. Let's break that down,
Yeah.
especially for those prepping for those UPSC law questions.
Okay, so right now you've got copyright protection for the composers and lyricists.
Right, the original creators.
Their works are protected for their lifetime plus 60 years.
Okay, makes sense. But as we mentioned, a lot of those foundational Carnatic compositions,
right.
they're in the public domain. They go way beyond that time frame.
Exactly. So what about recordings of these performances?
Ah, good question. That's where mechanical rights come in, right?
Exactly. Those protect the actual sound recordings for 60 years, prevent unauthorized copying and distribution.
Okay, so that's the recording itself. What about the performers themselves? Do they have any say?
Yes, they do have some rights. They have control over unauthorized recordings of, say, their live concerts, and in theory, they're entitled to royalties from sales or streaming of their music.
Okay, that in theory, sounds a little iffy.
Yeah.
What's the catch? Are these rights actually enforced when it comes to Carnatic music?
Well, that's the core issue.
Mm-hmm.
Enforcement is, well, patchy at best.
I see.
The improvisational nature makes it so hard to pinpoint what's actually copyrightable. Is it a specific melody, the overall interpretation, the artist's style, their flourishes, the lines get blurry, and that's where performers can end up vulnerable.
So basically, the law as it stands now, it doesn't quite get it. It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
That's a good way to put it.
Which leads us to a big question. Should the legal framework change to better reflect Carnatic music? And if so, what would that even look like?
That is the million-dollar question. And it's one that's causing a lot of debate among musicians, legal experts, policymakers. Everyone's weighing in.
And that's exactly where we're headed next. So UPSC aspirants, keep those notes handy, because we're about to dive into the potential solutions and the policy debates surrounding this whole dilemma. Stick with us.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about how the current copyright system,
Right.
it doesn't quite fit the improvisational heart of Carnatic music.
It really doesn't. And for those listening who are aiming for the UPSC, this is where things get really interesting. Understanding these legal and policy debates, it's key for tackling those tough mains exam questions.
Absolutely. This isn't just some theoretical debate.
No.
It has real consequences
Yeah.
for how this art form is protected
Yeah.
and passed on to future generations.
Absolutely. It's about preserving a legacy.
So let's imagine for a second that we're policymakers.
Okay.
If we wanted to actually revamp the law
Right.
to be more inclusive of Carnatic music,
Mm-hmm.
where would we even begin?
Well, one idea that's gaining some traction is this: creating a whole separate category of intellectual property rights, specifically for improvisations.
Oh, interesting. So like acknowledging those unique contributions of the performers
Right.
while still respecting the public domain status
Yeah.
of those foundational compositions.
Exactly. It's like saying, okay, Tyagaraja's Kriti is a treasure, it's for everyone.
Right.
But your individual expression, your manodharma in that moment, that deserves recognition too.
I like that, giving credit where credit is due. But, I mean, there are challenges, right?
Oh, of course. Tons.
How do you even define and document something as fluid as improvisation? Are we going to have a team of musicologists following every artist around with, like, a notation pad?
Well, that's where technology comes in. We're already seeing some amazing advances in audio and video recording that can really capture those subtle nuances of a live performance. Some people even think sophisticated algorithms could be used to analyze improvisations.
Oh, wow.
Help establish originality, even trace the lineage of musical ideas.
So technology could be a tool for both preserving the tradition
Right.
and for legal recognition.
Exactly. It's pretty exciting, actually.
It is. But this brings up another question that comes up a lot in these discussions.
Okay, what's that?
How do we balance protecting individual artists with maintaining that tradition of open access and shared knowledge, which is so central to Carnatic music?
That's the key, isn't it? One approach that's been floated is a tiered system of rights.
Okay, so like levels of protection.
Yeah, a basic level for all improvised performances. At least ensuring musicians are compensated when their work is used commercially.
So like a baseline level of protection.
Yeah.
Got it. Then what?
Then you could have additional layers for those truly exceptional improvisations. You know, the ones that really expand upon or reinterpret the original composition.
Oh, I see. So maybe a system of peer review, like what we see in academia,
Exactly.
where renowned musicians assess the performance, determine if it qualifies for that higher level of protection.
Precisely. The community safeguarding its own legacy. But it's crucial that any changes to the law are made in close consultation with musicians, scholars, all the stakeholders.
Yeah, it can't just be a top-down approach.
Definitely not.
We need to make sure the law supports and empowers, not restricts this art form.
I completely agree. And beyond recognizing improvisation, we need to strengthen performers' rights in the digital world too. As more and more Carnatic music is consumed online, we need ways to prevent unauthorized uploads and ensure fair compensation.
It's like a Wild West out there sometimes on those platforms.
It really is. You see recordings of concerts popping up without permission, and the algorithms often prioritize, more mainstream genres over classical traditions.
Yeah, it's tough to compete with the latest pop song.
It is, and that's why robust enforcement is crucial. Existing laws may technically prohibit that unauthorized use, but we need stronger penalties for infringement.
Hmm.
Better tools for musicians to track how their work is being used online.
More transparency from the platforms themselves.
Exactly.
Okay.
How are they curating Carnatic music content? How are those royalties calculated and distributed?
It's about making sure Carnatic musicians have a fair shot in the digital marketplace.
Absolutely. And government policies can play a role here too. Imagine incentives for platforms to promote diverse musical traditions like Carnatic music.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Public awareness is important as well. The more people understand these challenges, the more likely they are to support initiatives that protect these artists.
So, for anyone listening who's been moved by a Carnatic raga,
Yeah.
remember, you have a role to play. Support your favorite musicians. Go to concerts. Engage in these conversations about copyright and cultural heritage.
It's about collective action. We've talked about recognizing individual improvisation and strengthening digital rights, but there's another piece here. It's about preserving the entire ecosystem.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more.
Think about the idea of collective rights management. It could be a game changer.
What is that exactly?
Think of an organization like a performing rights society.
Okay.
It would represent the collective interests of Carnatic musicians.
Ah, interesting.
It could negotiate licensing deals with platforms, concert venues, all those entities.
So kind of like a union for musicians.
Yeah, exactly. It could also streamline things like royalty collection and distribution, make sure everyone's compensated fairly and transparently.
That makes sense. But could it do more than just financial stuff?
Oh, absolutely.
Ah.
Imagine this organization advocating for Carnatic music education,
Okay.
supporting emerging artists,
Right.
even working to preserve those old archival recordings. It's about creating a system where musicians have a collective voice, where they can amplify their concerns, protect their rights individually and as a community.
Building a sustainable future for the art form itself.
Yes, and ensuring it thrives for generations to come.
This has been incredibly insightful. So for our UPSC folks out there, remember, this topic, it's got serious exam potential. Understanding copyright law, cultural heritage, these policy debates,
It's all connected.
crucial for writing those strong, insightful answers.
It touches on history, culture, law, economics, even technology. It's fascinating. I encourage everyone to dive deeper, explore different perspectives, and form your own informed opinions.
A lot to think about. We'll be right back after a short break to wrap up our deep dive. Don't go anywhere.
And we're back. Wrapping up our deep dive, we've been talking about Carnatic music and copyright.
It's been quite a journey. Lots to think about. Definitely. A lot of layers. It really makes you think about tradition and creativity and law, all in this digital age. And for our listeners who are studying for the UPSC, this kind of topic,
Yeah.
it's perfect for those essay questions. It makes you connect the dots
Yeah.
between all these different areas.
It's a reminder that even these ancient traditions are being shaped by, modern challenges.
Right. So let's bring it all together. We talked about recognizing improvisation, strengthening digital rights,
Right.
and even that idea of collective rights management. But big picture, what does all this mean for the future of Carnatic music? Are you optimistic?
I am. Cautiously optimistic, I'd say.
Oh, I hear that cautiously.
Yeah.
What are the hurdles, the things we still need to overcome?
Well, implementing these reforms, any of them, it takes a real effort from everyone involved. Musicians, legal experts, tech people, even the general public.
It's like a massive collaborative raga.
Exactly. Everyone contributing their part to make it harmonious.
I like that. And we can't forget about technology's role in shaping the future of Carnatic music. I mean, we're already seeing innovations in online learning platforms, virtual concert experiences, even AI tools for music analysis. All of these could help preserve and promote this art form to a global audience even.
Absolutely. It's an exciting time. So much potential.
It is exciting, but I still hear that little bit of caution.
Well, we have to make sure technology is empowering artists, not replacing them.
Right.
And we need to be really careful about protecting traditional knowledge from exploitation. There's a fine line there between innovation and, appropriation.
Finding that balance is key, embracing the new while honoring the tradition. It's an ongoing conversation. It has to evolve as things change.
Yeah.
And for everyone listening, as we wrap up, here's a thought to leave you with. How do you think globalization and technology will impact Carnatic music? Will we see more appreciation, more accessibility, or will it lose some of its essence? Something to think about.
A big question. And it reminds us that the discussion doesn't end here. We have to keep exploring these ideas, keep challenging those assumptions, and keep working toward a future where Carnatic music thrives.
Beautifully said. And for our UPSC aspirants out there, this is gold. for those essays.
Mm.
Grasping copyright law, cultural heritage, these policy debates, it can really set you apart.
Ah,
A huge thank you to our expert for all these amazing insights.
my pleasure.
And to everyone listening, we hope you found this deep dive insightful and engaging. If you want to learn more, check out the original article in The Hindu.
Lots of good stuff in there.
And don't forget to subscribe to the Deep Dive for more deep dives, of course. Let us know what you want us to explore next. Until then, happy listening.